2024 has been my favourite year of travel so far. Visiting 10 countries within 5 continents and taking 34 flights in the process, I thought today we could go through this long list of flights that I've got on my notes app of all of the different destinations that I've travelled to in 2024. By that I mean the airline, the aircraft type, and the final destination. At the end of the video, I'm going to go through a few things like my favourite airlines, my least favourite, my most flown aircrafts, my longest flights, and the shortest flight that I took throughout the year. Currently out here in Da Nang in Vietnam. I've also been to Malaysia and the Philippines, so if you like what you see and want to see more of that, make sure you subscribe to my channel. We're fast approaching 700 subscribers. I'd really appreciate it if you could help me get there. But look, let's get into the list. I'm going to hold my phone and of course go through all the different flights that I took this year. And yeah, starting off quite easy, we've got a Lauda Europe A320 from Stansted Airport to Toulouse-Blagnac in the south of France. I spent a couple of days in Toulouse before taking a Ryanair flight, a Boeing 737 back to Stansted. That was a 2-hour flight. Ryanair really isn't too bad. Of course, it gets a lot of stick in the UK, but when you compare Ryanair to some of the flights that I've taken out here in Asia, trust me, it's not that bad. Rolling forward a couple of weeks, we've got a Virgin Atlantic A350 1000 flight from London Heathrow to Los Angeles. Of course, that was an 11-hour, 25-minute flight. The longest flight I've taken this year, but in probably the most comfortable economy class seat in the sky. When I arrived into Los Angeles, I had to take a connecting flight back on myself. That's right, I went backwards. I went to Las Vegas on board a Southwest Airlines 737. That was only about a 45-minute flight, but as you can see, I was extremely tired after such a long travel day. A couple of days later, I headed back to Los Angeles on board an American 737-900 series aircraft before then flying back to London Heathrow on a Delta Airlines A330neo. It's actually the first ever A330 family aircraft that I've ever flown on in my life, and it just so happened to be a Neo. A couple of weeks later, I flew to Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands, or Futureventura if you're from the UK. Fuerteventura is probably my favourite Canary Island. I played a load of tennis and the beaches on the island were absolutely fantastic. I believe it was Playa Jandia, or Jandia again if you're from the UK. I definitely recommend you give it a go. After a fantastic week in the Canary Islands, I then headed back to London Gatwick again on board a Boeing 737 with TUI Airways. A decent amount of legroom, but by no means a it's a no frills flight, at least on their short haul product anyway. Having just quit my job and escaping the 9 to 5, I treated myself to a 4-night trip to Dalaman in Turkey. I flew there and back on board an EasyJet A320neo from Luton Airport. About a 4-hour flight, again not very comfortable, but yeah, with EasyJet you get what you pay for. Literally a week later, it was time to head to the United States with one of my best friends, Matt. We actually headed to Miami in the United States on board a Norse Atlantic Airlines 787 Dreamliner, a comfortable flight for the 9-hour journey, given there was practically no one else on board the flight. Norse can't possibly make any money off of that route because according to the flight attendants, it's never more than half full. After a couple of weeks in Florida, we headed up to Atlanta, Georgia, not by a flight but by a Greyhound bus. From Atlanta, Georgia, the world's busiest airport, we went up north to Newark Liberty in New Jersey on a Boeing 737-900 with Delta Airlines. I then went and worked for 2 months in a summer camp in Pennsylvania, and then from there I went with my buddy Cam to Boston before flying from Boston to Nashville on Spirit Airlines. And I've got to be honest with you, I can understand why they're going bust. Following a road trip around all the states on the east coast of the USA, I then headed back to the UK on board another North Atlantic, but this time from JFK, and that flight was pretty full. Okay, now I'm back home, I'm back in the UK. I took a short trip with my brother to Marrakesh in Morocco, firstly on an A319 and then heading home on an A321neo with EasyJet. Then literally a week later, my friend Max and we went on board a Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner with TUI Airlines to Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic in the Caribbean, and what a trip that was. Flying home from Punta Cana on the Dash 9 of the 787 family, and then literally a couple of weeks later I got to fly on the Dash 10. The Dash 10 from London to Jeddah with Saudia Airlines back in economy class. Now, of course, this is the beginning of my new adventure, the beginning of this trip that I'm currently on today. And yeah, let's just say the next flight was the best flight I have ever had. I say that with chest as I got upgraded to business class, having gambled the lowest possible amount of money you could bid on their website. I literally bid like £158 or something ridiculous, and there I was for 10 hours heading all the way to Manila on a lay flatbed, and it was just absolutely amazing. That's pretty much it for all the long haul flights that I took this year. Now I've just taken some small domestic and of course, well, shorter international flights with a load of Asian carriers. First up, we flew from Manila to Tagbilaran, or I think it's Bohol, Panglao Bohol, my first island in the Philippines. A few weeks later, I then flew from Cebu City to Cataclan or Boracay, an amazing island in the Philippines, on board a Cebu Pacific A320neo. From Cataclan, I then flew to El Nido aboard an Air Swift ATR 72, the first ever propeller plane that I'd ever been on. I then flew on my second propeller plane, a de Havilland Canada Dash 8. I hope I've said that right. A Dash 8 aircraft with Philippine Airlines back to Manila before the next morning taking an early flight to Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. Again, on a Philippine Airlines, a PAL A321. After a fantastic week in Kuala Lumpur, one of my favourite cities, I then took the cheapest flight I could find in all of Asia from Kuala Lumpur to Penang, which is an island on the west side of Malaysia. Penang was great. I'm excited for those vlogs to drop in a few months' time. But from there, I then took the shortest flight on a 737 with Firefly, which was just 80 miles in distance. 80 miles. That's crazy. Best of all, the flight was actually cheaper than the bus and ferry option that I also considered, which, let's just be honest, is ridiculous. From Langkawi, I then headed all the way to Kota Kinabalu with a stop off in Kuala Lumpur with Batik Air, one of the worst airlines in Asia. But for me, I didn't really have a bad experience, although unfortunately my in-flight entertainment wasn't working. But by the looks of it, it wasn't working for most other passengers. After a great week in Borneo and even making national headline news as well with my TikTok account, which was just crazy, I then headed back to Sabang, I guess the Luton airport to London of Kuala Lumpur, and that was a 3-hour flight once again with Firefly. Now that completes a fantastic month in Malaysia. I then took an A321 from Kuala Lumpur to Ho Chi Minh City before the next morning taking a wide-body A350-900, again with Vietnam Airlines, to Hanoi, the very most northern part of Vietnam. And then after a week or so in Ha Long Bay, I then headed from Cat B Airport to Da Nang, where I am now on board a VietJet. Not necessarily the most comfortable airline, but I had no one in front of me. I had unlimited legroom. And that brings me to tomorrow. I'm currently recording this at, well, nearly midnight. Well, it is midnight. It's 5:30 midnight here in Vietnam. And that brings me to tomorrow. I'm going to be heading once again on board a Vietnam Airlines A320 to, what is it, Nha Trang? I'm going to Nha Trang because the weather out here in Da Nang and Hoi An and Quy Nhon, I'm probably not saying that right, it's just terrible. The weather out here in Da Nang has been awful. I do not recommend you visit Vietnam in December. I guess since it's near the end of the year, we could do a bit of a, award show for some of these airlines, if that's what you want to call it. First of all, my top 3 favourite airlines. In third place, Vietnam Airlines. A great airline, lots of legroom, some nice food as well. My 1-hour flight from Kuala Lumpur to Ho Chi Minh City came with a full 3-course meal, which again, I was not expecting. Virgin Atlantic coming in at number 2, of course. It's a quirky, cool airline from the UK, obviously owned by Richard Branson, no surprise. And number 1, Saudia Airlines, again, a little bit biased. I had a lay flat business class seat, but I think even without the business class, I was really surprised with their economy product from London. And then my least favourite airlines coming in at number 3, we've got AirAsia. Just not very good. Very limited legroom and the food on board was cold. It was, yeah. Number 2 is Lauda Europe, of course, a subsidiary of the Ryanair group. It does what it says on the tin. It gets you to your destination, and that's about it. Number 1 is Spirit Airlines. Now, as much as I like their livery, of course, it's called the Banana for a reason. It's a bright yellow aircraft. At the same time, it was so uncomfortable. And yeah, for 2 hours from Boston to Nashville, Tennessee, it wasn't my favourite experience, that's for sure. My most flown airline. Now, the number 1 is a joint number 1. You're probably not going to be surprised as to what that is. But for number 3, we've got an A350 family aircraft. I did one of the 900s and one of the 1000s. So that's 2 A350s with Virgin Atlantic and Vietnam Airlines. I literally took that flight just last week. I don't know how I forgot, but we move. Number 2 is the 787 Dreamliner. Again, the 8, the 9 and the 10 family. I took them all this year, and I'd say my favourite of the 6 that I flew, again, it just has to be Saudia, not only because of the lay flatbed that I was on, but just the service. It was a great service, even back in economy. Number 1, as I said, we've got a joint first place between the 2 most popular narrow body aircraft in the sky. We've got the A320 series and the 737 series aircraft from Airbus and Boeing. I took 22 combined flights between the A320 and the 737, and I've just got to be honest, the A320 is my favourite. It's quieter and just feels a little bit more room on board as well. My longest flights were 9.5 hours between London and Miami with Norse, then 10 hours between Jeddah and Manila, but with business class, that could have gone on for an extra 6 or 7 hours. I probably wouldn't have minded. And then number 1 at 11.5 hours, it's the Virgin Atlantic A350 to Los Angeles from London. That's about a 5,400 mile trip. And yeah, I guess going horizontally over the Atlantic, that's a long way from home. And there we have it. That is my 2024 Spotify Wrapped Flights edition. Having flown for 126 hours or over 5 days, it has been an amazing year. If you enjoyed what you saw today and want to go back and check out some of my flight vlogs and travel reviews, then please feel free to go and do so. And I guess subscribe to my channel as well if you want to check out all of these Asia vlogs as well. I've got videos scheduled for the next 8 or 9 months, which is just crazy. I've put a lot of work in, practically daily vlogging my entire experience. And trust me when I say this, those videos I do not want you to miss out on. Anyway, I've been Matt and you guys have been so kind for watching. And I guess if I don't see you, have a Merry Christmas and a very happy and successful New Year as well. And I look forward to checking in with you in my next video.